Good day to you. In the aftermath of the events on Capitol Hill on 6th January 2021, there's been a rush of commentary discussing whether or not Donald Trump actually committed some form of criminal offence on that particular day. The words that he used in the speech he made to the rally of his supporters, directing them towards Congress, are judged by some people to have constituted some form of criminal offence. It's not entirely clear always what criminal offence they are referring to, but it seems most likely that they believe that it was some form of incitement. Incitement being a criminal offence recognised as such, I understand, by US federal and state laws, as it used to be until fairly recently in Britain. I want to discuss these questions today. I want to make it clear before I do that, in my opinion, this is a separate issue from the question of impeachment, which most unwisely, in my opinion, the Democrats are pushing forward with. Incitement is a question for the courts. It's a matter of criminal law. Impeachment concerns high crimes and misdemeanors judged to be such by Congress. The two are connected, but they are not the same. I should also make, first of all, clear that, in my opinion, merely directing people to go towards Congress to rally peacefully would in itself not be any form of incitement or, as some people are saying, pressure upon Congress to commit unconstitutional acts. Now, in relation to the second, much of this turns, as I understand it, on the question of whether Vice President Pence and Congress had some kind of constitutional obligation to certify the results of the Electoral College as declared by the electors appointed by the states, or whether they had any right to dispute this or deny the certification of those electors or to count others. Now, I am not an American constitutional lawyer, but I'm going to say that, in my opinion, for what it's worth, I think that those who say that Congress and the Vice President had no active role in this matter or no constitutionally provided for active role in this matter, and that their task was merely a ceremonial one, making it somehow an infringement of their constitutional duties or an invasion of their constitutional duties, to ask them or demand of them that they take a different course. I think that is wrong. I think that is based on a misunderstanding of what the Constitution and the relevant law says. I am sure that any provision which gives Congress and the Vice President a role in the counting of votes of the electors must give them some exercise of discretion on the certification of those votes. I say that because no provision of the US Constitution or in US constitutional law has merely a ceremonial meaning, and denying the Vice President and Congress an actual role and reducing them to a purely ceremonial one seems to me to be the interpretation that some people are trying to force on them. I don't really think that can be right. I say that with the qualification, I repeat again, that this is not a field of constitutional law in which I am any sort of expert, but that is my view. On this point, I will just add one example of why I think the framers of the Constitution and of the relevant provision certainly intended the Vice President and Congress to retain some degree of residual discretion can be illustrated by a possible hypothetical example. Let us assume that a group illegally seized power in one of the states and mandated electors to the Electoral College by intimidating the State House of Representatives. In other words, this group had engaged in some form of insurrection in that state and had sent electors, through having illegally usurped power, to participate in the Electoral College. Would, in that kind of situation, the President and the Congress be obliged to certify the votes of those electors simply because an intimidated and frightened House of Representatives in that particular state had been pressured by this illegal group into appointing those electors, certifying those electors? I am sure, of course, not. And given that that is so, given that obviously such discretion must exist in that circumstance, I am sure that the framers of the Constitution and of this provision did intend the Vice President and Congress to exercise some discretion in this matter. However, it seems to me that this is a question for constitutional lawyers in the United States, and I am not one, and I'm content to leave it for them to thrash out. However, I have to say again that I can fully understand why other people, like Donald Trump, like many of those people who were in Washington on the 6th of January, might have thought that going outside Congress and protesting peacefully might be a way of indicating that they wanted certain things changed and certain steps taken, even if Congress was not prepared to accept those changes. It seems to me people have a right to protest, and Congress has a right either to take those protests into account and act on them, or to refuse to do so. That is the protesters' right, that is Congress's right, that is the position in a democratic society. What, of course, people do not have the right to do is to act violently, to engage in riotous behaviour, to break into the Capitol building, to do the various things that happened on the 6th of January. But can it be seriously argued that Donald Trump, in what he said, actually incited them to do so? I have to say that I think the chances of proving that are extremely low, to the point of non-existent. First of all, it's quite clear that Donald Trump, in his comments at the rally, asked the protesters to protest peacefully. It seems to me that any prosecution of Donald Trump on incitement grounds would have to get round the problem that he called on people to protest peacefully and lawfully, and assumed that somehow he'd intended some other meaning, and that the protesters understood him to have that alternative meaning. I don't think that is possible. If we talk about Britain, where the law of incitement has been replaced by the law of encouraging unlawful acts or of assisting a crime in English law, then it seems to me that here, under Section 44 of the Public Order Act, you'd have to show that Donald Trump, when he used the words that he did, had to both anticipate and expect that the protesters would behave in the way that they did, and that he did not expect them to behave peacefully as he had urged them to do. Realistically, I don't think there is any chance of that. Under the old common law of incitement, it would have been almost as difficult. He would have had to have some anticipation that some sort of offence would be committed. And again, I can't see realistically that there is any chance that that could happen. In the United States, as I understand it, the position is actually, if anything, even more difficult. In 1919, Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, writing the majority of opinion of the Supreme Court in the case of Schenck versus the United States, uttered the famous words, "The most stringent protection of free speech would not protect a man falsely shouting fire in a theatre and causing a panic. The question in every case is whether the words used are used in such circumstances and are of such a nature as to create a clear and present danger that they will bring about the substantive evils that Congress has a right to prevent." That decision was apparently modified by the Supreme Court in its 1969 decision in the case of Brandenburg versus Ohio, where it substituted the words imminent lawless action for clear and present danger. And so I think here again we have to ask ourselves whether Donald Trump, calling upon his supporters to go and protest peacefully outside Congress, could have had some presentiment that they would engage in an imminent lawless action when they went there. I have to say, I think that would be almost impossible to prove, and I was interested to see that this was also the view of Andrew McCarthy, who is a former federal prosecutor working at the Southern District of New York, who has been extremely critical of Donald Trump's actions in this matter, and who believes that by his actions on the 6th of January 2021, Donald Trump committed an impeachable act. What does Andrew McCarthy say? He says the following: I have prosecuted the federal offence of inciting crimes of violence. In my judgment, there is no way the president could be convicted in a criminal trial. The First Amendment makes incitement a very tough proof. My defendant was convicted because I had strong evidence that he, A, made statements that unambiguously called for murder, B, fully intended his statements to incite the commission of murder, and C, was a globally notorious terrorist who had a history of directing subordinates to conduct lethal attacks. There is nothing like that in Trump's situation. Now, I say all of this. Andrew McCarthy considers that Donald Trump acted in a reckless and irresponsible manner on 6th January 2021. The same view is taken by Jonathan Turley, an American defense attorney who is also a professor of law at George Washington University. Neither, it seems, believes that Donald Trump's actions constituted the criminal offence of incitement. I think that this concept that Donald Trump committed a crime of incitement, or indeed any other sort of crime that could be realistically prosecuted, is a completely wrong one. Perhaps Donald Trump did act irresponsibly. Certain of the words he used might be construed in that way. But I think it is important in this sort of situation to maintain a sense of proportion and to recognise that however foolishly he may, in the opinions of some people, have acted, it is realistically impossible to say that he committed an actual crime. Thank you very much for listening to me on this broadcast. Please join me for future broadcasts on this channel. Please also look us up in our main channel, the Duran, and also check out my friend and colleague Alex Christophorou's channel. You'll find links below. Please also support us on our other platforms, BitChute, Library, Odyssey, Rumble, and the rest. Please also support us via Subscribestar, PayPal, and Patreon. Come to our shop and buy the wonderful things that you will find there, our amazing magic mugs, our wonderful t-shirts, including the one I'm wearing now, and our sweatshirts and hoodies. Please also get yourself one of our amazing hats. You will find many of them with the flags of many countries. This particular mug, as you can see, has the flag of the United States. And please also remember to subscribe to this channel and to subscribe to our other channels. And I look forward to welcome you again in a future program. Thank you.